The roar of the crowd still echoed in Elvis's ears, a physical vibration that hummed through the floorboards of the Las Vegas Hilton. He'd just finished the second show of the night. A high-octane performance that left sweat dripping from his pompadour and his famous scarves tossed into the adoring masses. Backstage, the energy was still electric. People milled around, congratulating him, laughing, talking a mile a minute. His entourage, the Memphis Mafia, moved with purpose, ensuring everything was handled. Elvis peeled off his jeweled jumpsuit, the heavy fabric sticking to his skin. His valet, Charlie Hodge, was already there, helping him. The suit, so magnificent under the stage lights, felt like a costume now. A heavy shell he was shedding, he tossed it onto a nearby chair. A sigh escaping his lips. It wasn't a sigh of relief. Not exactly. More like a deflation. The high was fading, the adrenaline draining away, leaving behind a curious emptiness. "Great show, E," said Red West, stepping into the dressing room. Red was a mountain of a man, Elvis's longtime friend, bodyguard, and sometimes sparring partner. His eyes, usually sharp and watchful, held a quiet warmth now. He'd seen Elvis at his highest and his lowest, and he knew the silent language of his moods better than anyone. Elvis managed a weak smile, wiping his face with a towel. "Yeah, I guess so." The words felt hollow as they left his mouth. He glanced at himself in the mirror, not seeing the dazzling performer everyone else saw, but just him, a guy with tired eyes and a racing mind. Red frowned slightly. He knew that tone. It was the same one Elvis used when he was about to retreat into himself to pull up the drawbridge. "What's on your mind, buddy?" he asked, pulling up a chair and settling in, not too close, not too far. He wasn't going to push, but he wasn't going to let Elvis just disappear either. Elvis sat down heavily on the edge of the dressing table, his shoulders slumped. He picked at a loose sequin on the discarded jumpsuit. "It's just a lot, Red." He waved a hand, vaguely encompassing the whole crazy world he lived in. The noise, the lights, the screaming. He paused, searching for the right words. "You know, out there, it's like I'm not even real. I'm just this thing they want, this idea." Red nodded slowly. He understood the pressure. He saw it every single day. "They love you. That's what it is, pure love." He looked at Red, his blue eyes clouded with an emotion. Red couldn't quite place, not sadness, not anger, but something fragile. Exposed. Or do they just love the records, the movies, the image? He swallowed hard. What if one day I step out there and I'm just me, and they see it and they don't like it anymore? The question hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Red had heard Elvis's voiced doubts before, but never quite like this, never with this stark, almost desperate edge. This wasn't just about a bad note or a forgotten lyric. This was deeper. This was about identity. "You are real, Red said gently, his voice firm. "You're the most real person I know. Not just the records, not just the movies, they're here for you." He paused, letting the words sink in. "What happened tonight?" Did something feel off?" Elvis shook his head, running a hand through his damp hair. "No. That's the thing. It felt fine, good. Even the crowd was wild. I hit all the notes." He looked around the opulent dressing room at the flowers and telegrams from well-wishers, the expensive cologne bottles. "It just feels like a performance, all of it. Not just the show, my whole life." He stood up and walked to the small liquor cabinet, pouring himself a glass of water. His hands trembled slightly. "Sometimes I look out at all those faces, and it's like I'm looking at them through a pane of glass. Like I'm not really connecting. Like I'm just a puppet." Red watched him, his heart aching for his friend. This was the lonely side of superstardom, the part nobody ever saw. The part that ate away at you in the quiet hours after the applause died down. "You're not a puppet. You're a man, and you bring joy to millions." "Do I?" Elvis turned, his eyes pleading for an answer. for reassurance that he clearly couldn't find within himself. Or am I just making a lot of noise? Am I just a flash in the pan? What if I wake up tomorrow and I can't sing? What if they all figure out I'm just Vernon's boy from Tupelo who got lucky? The raw confession hung heavy in the air. King of rock and roll, the idol of millions, was confessing to his friend that he felt like a fraud, scared that it would all disappear as quickly as it had arrived. Red knew this was going to be a long night, but he also knew he wouldn't leave Elvis's side. Not when he was hurting like this. The dressing room slowly emptied out. The last of the entourage members, sensing the shift in Elvis's mood, offered quiet good nights and slipped away. Charlie Hodge tidied up, then gave Red a knowing look, and excused himself. Soon it was just Elvis and Red, the echoes of the crowd replaced by the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the hotel. Elvis had changed into a simple tracksuit, a stark contrast to the flamboyant stage wear. He sat hunched on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The exhaustion was etched on his face, but it wasn't just physical. It was a deep, soul-weary fatigue. "You know," Red Elvis began, his voice softer now, almost conversational. "When I was a kid back in Tupelo, all I wanted was to sing, to make people feel something, to make my mama proud." He paused, a wistful look in his eyes. "I never imagined any of this, the limos, the jets, the thousands of people screaming my name. It was just a dream, a little dream of playing some country songs, maybe a few blues numbers on a local radio station." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Then suddenly, boom, 1 minute I'm driving a truck. The next I'm on TV shaking my hips, and the world goes crazy. It happened so fast, Red, too fast, maybe. Red listened, letting Elvis unspool his thoughts. He knew Elvis often felt overwhelmed by the sheer scale of his fame, but hearing it articulated like this, with such raw honesty, was different. Sometimes, Elvis continued, turning to face Red, his eyes wide and troubled, "I feel like I'm stuck on a runaway train, and I'm not even driving it anymore. It's just going on for dear life, trying not to fall off." He ran a hand over his face. "Every show, every movie, every record, it's like another turn of the wheel. And the stakes get higher. The expectations get bigger. And you feel like you can't meet them?" Red asked gently, prompting him. "Exactly. It's like everyone expects me to be this superhero, unbreakable, perfect. But I'm not Red. I'm just me, Vernon, and Gladys's boy. A guy who sometimes wills tired. A guy who sometimes wonders if he's doing it right." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What if I mess up? What if I trip? What if I sing a bad note and everyone just laughs? Or worse? What if they stop caring?" Red said firmly. "You're Elvis Presley. There's never been anyone like you, and there never will be. You changed everything, music, culture, the way people think." Elvis scoffed. "Change things? I just sang some songs, Red. I just moved around a bit. That's what I mean about the image. They build you up so high, they make you out to be something you are not, and then you have to live up to it every single day, every single minute. It's lonely, Red, being up there, knowing all those eyes are on you, knowing they want something from you, and sometimes you just feel empty inside, like you've given everything you have, and there's nothing left, but you still have to give more." Red remembered countless nights like this, or moments in cars or on planes when Elvis would pull back the curtain just a little. He knew the burden of fame was immense, but this raw outpouring was intense. "It sounds like you feel like you're constantly putting on an act, even when you're not on stage." Elvis nodded. "Yeah, like I'm always playing Elvis, even for my friends, even for my family sometimes, because everyone has an idea of who Elvis is supposed to be, and it's exhausting, Red, just plain exhausting." He looked at his hands, turning them over and over. "Sometimes I wonder if I even remember who I am, without the lights and the music, if I'm still just that kid from Tupelo, or if I've become this other person, this Elvis that I can't escape. Red saw the pain in his friend's eyes. This wasn't just about doubt. It was about a deep-seated fear of losing himself entirely within the persona he had created. He knew he couldn't offer platitudes. Elvis needed to be heard, truly heard in all his vulnerability. The quiet of the dressing room deepened, the silence punctuated only by the distant sounds of the hotel coming alive with late-night activity. Elvis had moved from the couch to the large plush armchair, curling up almost defensively like a much smaller man. Red sat opposite him, unwavering, a solid anchor in the swirling current of Elvis's emotions. "The funny thing is," Elvis murmured, his voice laced with a bitter irony, "they cheer louder when I just stand there looking pretty than when I actually try to sing my heart out sometimes. It's like they just want to hit a high note." He let out a ragged breath. "And that's when the fear really kicks in. The fear that I'm just a pretty face, a flash in the pan, that it's all just hype, and I'm not actually good enough." "You are good enough. More than good enough. You know that anyone who's ever seen you, heard you, they know it, do they?" Elvis's eyes were fixed on the ceiling. "Or do they just say that because they're supposed to? Because I'm Elvis. What if I've just been coasting on charm and a lucky break? What if the next record bombs? What if I go out there and my voice cracks? What if I forget the words? What if I suddenly look old and they all just turn away?" The stream of questions poured out a torrent of insecurities that had clearly been building for a long time. This wasn't just performance anxiety. This was a deep-seated imposter syndrome magnified 1,000 times by the blinding spotlight he lived under. "And then I walk out there and the lights hit and the screams start and it's like a mask. Just drops over my face, the Elvis's mask, and I just go through the motions. Smile, sing, move." He closed his eyes for a moment, pinching the bridge of his nose. "It feels so fake, Red. It feels like I'm living a lie, and it's eating me up." Red knew he couldn't just dismiss these feelings. They were real, raw, and clearly deeply painful for Elvis. "It's not a lie, What you do up there, it's real. The music you create, the feeling you put into it, that's you. That's your heart, the persona. The Elvis they see. That's just a way for you to continue." Elvis countered, opening his eyes and looking directly at Red. "What if I've lost the connection to that kid who just wanted to sing? What if I've become so wrapped up in the image, the money, the everything that I've forgotten why I started in the first place?" He sighed, a heavy, weary sound. "Sometimes I honestly don't know why I do it anymore. It's not just for the money. It's certainly not for the peace of mind." Red saw a flicker of the old Elvis, the passionate, driven artist beneath the layers of doubt. He knew Elvis. Loved music, loved performing. This was the dark side of that love, the fear of losing it, of it losing its meaning. "You do it because it's in your soul," Red stated, his voice calm but firm. "You do it because you have to sing, because you have to perform. It's like breathing for you. And trust me, the people out there, they feel that they scream. That's why they keep coming back." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And you didn't just get lucky. You worked your tail off. You poured your heart into every song. You took risks. You opened doors nobody else even knew were there. That's not luck. That's talent. That's genius. And that's all you." Elvis listened, his gaze unfocused. He seemed to be processing Red's words, turning them over in his mind. The raw pain was still there. But perhaps, just perhaps, a tiny crack of light had appeared in the darkness. Elvis was quiet for a long moment, the intensity of his earlier outburst subsiding, leaving behind a profound weariness. Red waited, sensing that Elvis wasn't done, that there was more to unburden. Finally, Elvis spoke again, his voice softer, almost reflective. "Remember that time back in '56 when we played those small towns like those, high school gyms, Red, no fancy lights, no big stages. Just a microphone, a couple of amps, and a packed gym full of kids. Red smiled a genuine, warm smile. I remember. You were just Elvis then. No? King of rock and roll title? Yeah, just a wild young man with a guitar and a whole lot of fire. That's it, Elvis said, his eyes distant as if he was seeing those old dusty gyms again. That's what I miss sometimes. That simplicity, that feeling that it was just about the music, about connecting with people one-on-one, without all the hype. He gestured around the luxurious dressing room at the signs of his immense fame. Now it's so big, so grand. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a little ant in this giant roaring machine. He looked at Red, a flicker of genuine sadness in his eyes. Do you ever worry, Red, that I've lost touch, that I've forgotten where I came from, that I've become this caricature? Red shook his head firmly. Never. You might be surrounded by all this, but you're still the same guy underneath. You still care about the little things. You'd still remember where you came from. You just have a lot more responsibilities. Responsibilities? Elvis repeated the word, sounding heavy on his tongue. Yeah, that's another thing. Everyone depends on me. The band, the crew, my family, all these people. If I mess up, if I fall, it's not just me who goes down. It's everyone. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of exasperation. The pressure, Red, it's crushing sometimes. It's like walking a tightrope over a canyon and 1,000 people are watching, hoping you don't fall. But you don't fall, Red countered. You always make it across every night. That's what makes you who you are. Your strength, your resilience. Elvis sighed. Strength. Sometimes it feels like pure stubbornness, or just plain fear. Fear of disappointing everyone. He leaned back in the chair, eyes closed. I remember Mama telling me, Elvis, always be true to yourself. And I try, Red, I really do. But sometimes, when you're Elvis, it's hard to know who yourself even is. Red knew he couldn't solve all of Elvis's existential doubts in one night, but he could offer perspective. Could remind Elvis of the impact he had beyond the money and the fame. Remember that letter, Red began, his voice soft. The one we got a few months back from that kid in Ohio. The one who was really sick and his folks said your music was the only thing that kept him going, kept him fighting. Elvis opened his eyes slowly. He remembered. They got thousands of letters, but some just stuck with you. Or that time, Red continued, when we were leaving that concert in Houston, and that old lady must have been 80 years old. She pushed past the security just to tell you that your gospel music had brought her back to faith after her husband passed. Remember that? These were the moments that sometimes broke through the cynical shell, the real connections. That's not about the hype, Red said, his voice earnest. That's about your heart. That's about your talent. That's about something real. You give to people. You don't just sing songs. You bring hope. You bring joy. You bring comfort. You touch souls. That's what they're screaming for. That's why they're here. Because you give them something they can't get anywhere else. Elvis was quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Less like despair, more like thoughtful consideration. He was listening, truly listening to the truth of Red's word. The weight of his fears hadn't lifted entirely, but perhaps a tiny bit of air had been let into the suffocating chamber of his self-doubt. The clock on the dressing room wall showed it was well past 2 a.m. The hotel was quieter now, the last of the late-night revelers having retreated. Elvis had poured himself another glass of water, then paced the room for a few minutes, a restless energy returning, but a calmer one. It's just you get so used to the applause, Red Elvis said, stopping by the mirror and staring at his reflection, not with the earlier self-scrutiny, but with a more distant analytical gaze. It becomes like a drug. You need it, and then when it stops, When you're back here in the quiet, that's when the ghosts come out. All the doubts you push down during the day, all the fears you ignore when you're smiling for the cameras. He turned to Red. Do you ever wonder if I'll just burn out? If there's only so much I can give before there's nothing left? Red had considered it. Of course, he worried about Elvis all the time. The demands on him were superhuman, but he knew Elvis had an unshakable core, a deep wellspring of talent and passion. You've got a lot more to give. Maybe you just need to remember what fills you up, instead of what drains you. What fills me up, Elvis mused, almost to himself. He walked over to a nearby acoustic guitar, one he kept baxed for practice. He picked it up, cradling it gently. His fingers instinctively found the fretboard strumming a soft, almost inaudible chord. It was a simple, clean sound, far removed from the bombastic orchestral arrangements of his stage show. This, he said, looking at the guitar, just this, sometimes when I can just sit and play, no pressure, no expectations, just the music. Played a few more gentle chords, a melancholic melody starting to form. Or being with my family, Priscilla, Lisa, Marie, when I can just be Daddy, not Elvis. He smiled faintly, a genuine smile this time. They don't care if I mess up a lyric, they just want me there. Then that's what you need to hold on to, Red said, his voice soft. Those moments, those real connections, they're your anchor. They remind you who you are beyond the lights and the screams. Elvis nodded, still strumming the guitar. It's hard, Red. It's like there's two of me, the one everyone sees who has to be perfect, always on, and the other one, the one that just wants to sit in the quiet, play guitar, and feel normal for a little while. He paused, then looked up, his blue eyes meeting Red's, and sometimes the Elvis eats up the other guy, and I get lost. But you always find your way back, Red said, his voice steady. You always do. And you've got people around you who will help you find your way like me, like the rest of us who really care about you. We see both sides of you. And we love both of them. Elvis's gaze softened. He set the guitar down gently, then looked at Red, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. You always know what to say, don't you, big man? Red chuckled. I just say what I see, And what I see is a man with a gift, a man who works harder than anyone I know, and a man who touches millions of lives. And yeah, a man who sometimes needs to be reminded of all that, because the weight of it can get heavy. You're human, It's okay to have doubts. It's okay to feel scared. It doesn't make you any less of a performer or less of a legend. In fact, it makes you more real, more relatable. It makes you a human being, not just a king. Elvis picked up the guitar again, but this time he didn't just strum. He began to hum a soft, familiar melody. An old gospel hymn. His voice, stripped of all amplification and showmanship, was pure and clear, filled with a quiet reverence. It was the voice that had moved millions, raw and beautiful, right there in the intimate space of the dressing room. And in that moment, Red knew Elvis was remembering exactly who he was and why he did it all. He was finding his way back. The gospel hymn faded into silence, leaving a peaceful hush in its wake. Elvis set the guitar back carefully, a serene expression on his face, a marked change from the earlier torment. He took a deep breath, and it seemed to fill his lungs more completely, more freely. Thanks, Red, Elvis said, his voice quiet but sincere. For listening, for just being here. Red shrugged, a slight smile playing on his lips. What are friends for? You do the same for me sometimes when I'm bogged down with things. He knew that wasn't entirely true. Elvis rarely had the bandwidth to listen to anyone else's problems, but the sentiment was important. Elvis nodded. I get so caught up, in the schedule, the demands, the expectations. I forget to just breathe and remember why I started this whole crazy thing. He stood up, stretching his arms above his head, a genuine relaxation flowing through his frame. It's easy to feel like you're alone on an island when you're up on that stage, Red. Even with all those people out there cheering sometimes. That's when you feel the loneliest. That's why you got us, E, Red said, thumping his chest lightly. Your family, your real friends, we're not here for the glitz. We're here for you. To remind you when you forget. To hold you up when you stumble. Elvis walked over to the dressing table, picking up a framed photograph of Lisa Marie, her cherubic face smiling up at him. He held it for a moment, a tender expression softening his features. She makes it all worth it, you know. Just seeing her face, knowing I'm doing this for her too, to give her a good life, to make her proud. She's proud, Red assured him, more than you know. Elvis nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. I guess what I needed tonight was just to be human, to be allowed to feel scared and tired and doubt myself without having to put on a brave face. He looked at Red, his eyes clear now, the earlier storm having passed. You let me do that? You just listened and you reminded me of the good stuff. Anytime, E, Red said. That's what family does. He stood up, stretching his own large frame. Now, how about we get out of this hotel? Go somewhere quiet. Get some real food, and then maybe get some sleep. Elvis chuckled. Sounds good, Red. Sounds real good. He grabbed a jacket, pulling it on. As they walked out of the dressing room, the hallway was deserted. The energy of the earlier hours had completely dissipated. You know, Elvis said, his voice a little lighter now. When you were talking about those old shows back in the gyms, I remembered the feeling, that pure rush of just singing. For the sheer joy of it. Without all the extra layers, maybe I need to find a way to get back to that sometimes. Red clapped him on the shoulder. You will, E. You've got the heart for it. And we'll be right here reminding you to listen to it. As they walked towards the private exit, Elvis looked around the deserted corridor. A faint echo of the crowd. Still, Elvis Presley. The legend. The king. Tonight he had allowed himself to be just Elvis the man. And in that vulnerability he had found a quiet strength he hadn't known he possessed. The doubts wouldn't vanish entirely. They were part of the price of fame. But now he knew he wasn't alone in facing them. He had his friend, his anchor by his side. The quiet drive away from the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip was a welcome balm. Elvis sat in the back of the limousine, staring out the window at the receding neon glow, the city slowly giving way to the dark expanse of the desert. Red was in the passenger seat, letting Elvis have his space, but his presence was a reassuring weight. You know, Red, Elvis said, breaking the comfortable silence, it's weird. I can stand in front of 70,000 people at a stadium and not bat an eye. But then I get back to the quiet, and suddenly, I'm questioning every single thing. It's like the quiet gives the doubts room to breathe, Red observed. The noise out there, it pushes them down, but they're still there, waiting. Elvis nodded slowly, and tonight they just exploded. It felt good, though, to just say it all out loud, to not have to pretend I'm invincible for once. He paused, then turned slightly to face Red's profile. You always make me feel like I can just be myself, Red, no matter what. Red offered a small, genuine smile. That's because you are yourself. E and I see it, the real you, the one that sometimes forgets how much good he does in the world. The good I do, Elvis repeated, a thoughtful frown on his face. Sometimes it's hard to see that when you're caught up in the machine, it's like 1 minute you're a singer, the next you're a brand, a product. He sighed. And it's not just the music, it's everything. The clothes, the house, the cars, it's all part of this image. And sometimes I wonder, does anyone care about me? The person. Or just Elvis, the show. People who are really here, the ones who stick by you, who worry about you when you're not looking so good. We care about Vernon and Gladys's boy. We care about the man who sometimes worries. He's not good enough, even when he's the best there is. Elvis was quiet for a moment, taking that in. It's a heavy crown, Red, he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. Being the king, Sometimes I just want to take it off and put it in a box, just for a little while. You can, Red told him. You do sometimes. When you're at Graceland with Lisa, when you're just messing around on the guitar in the music room, when you're with us, just talking. Those are the times that keep you sane. Elvis looked out at the dark desert landscape, the stars starting to appear in the vast sky. Maybe you're right. Maybe I just need to remember to do it more often, to find those moments of quiet, to remind myself that it's okay to be human. He paused, then a faint, genuine smile touched his lips. I guess it's a journey, huh? This whole thing. And the doubts are just part of the ride. They are, Red agreed. They keep you honest. They keep you pushing as long as you don't let them consume you. And you got people to help you make sure they don't. Car continued its smooth journey, the hum of the engine, a comforting drone. Elvis leaned back, his eyes still on the stars. The raw, open wound of his self-doubt was still there, but it felt less painful now, less overwhelming. The vulnerability he had shared had been met with unwavering acceptance, and that had made all the difference. He still had a long way to go in accepting himself fully, but tonight he had taken a crucial step. He had let his guard down and found comfort in the steady presence of a true friend. They pulled up to a quiet, unassuming diner on the outskirts of town, a place Red knew Elvis could eat without too much fuss. It was late enough that only a few truckers and early risers were there. They slipped into a booth in the back, away from the sparse crowd. Ordering simple breakfast food, scrambled eggs, bacon, coffee, felt like a small act of rebellion against the grandiosity of his life. Elvis sipped his coffee, the warmth, the comfort against the chill of his lingering unease. You know, Red, Elvis said, stirring his coffee, the weirdest part is, I love it too. I love being on stage. I love the music. I love the connection with the fans when it feels real. It's a paradox, isn't it? To love something so much, and yet sometimes feel so crushed by it. Red nodded. Anything worth doing comes with its own set of burdens, and you're doing something extraordinary. The wait's gonna be extraordinary too. Paused, then added. But the joy is extraordinary as well. You gotta remember that. Elvis sighed. I try. It's just some nights like tonight. The joy feels so far away. It feels like I'm just going through the motions. And that's what really scares me. Losing the feeling, losing the passion. You'll never lose the passion, Red stated with conviction. It's woven into who you are. It's what drove you from that little house in Tupelo to where you are now. You might get tired, you might get confused, but that fire, that's always going to be there. That voice, that energy, those moves, that's not just something you put on, that's coming from deep inside you. You couldn't fake that. For this long, not to this many people. What you do up there, it comes from a place of pure, undunch them into fists. I guess I just forget sometimes. I forget that it's not just a job, but it gets so tangled up with the business, with the demands, with the expectations that it's hard to tell where the artist ends and the product begins. The artist is always there, Red said gently. Underneath all the layers and the product, that's just a way for the artist to reach more people. It doesn't diminish the art. It just amplifies it. Their food arrived, steaming and hearty. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the mundane act of eating a grounding experience, after the emotional intensity of the night. I remember one time after a show in Hawaii, Elvis began picking at his bacon. And for a moment, Red, it was like a lightning bolt. It reminded me that it wasn't just about the screaming fans or the money or the fame. It was about touching people in their quiet moments. His eyes held a new kind of light, a spark of the passion Red had spoken of. Those moments. Those are the ones that remind me why I started, why I keep going. And that's why you're the king, Red said simply. Because you do that, you reach people, you heal them, you make them feel alive. That's a gift. And it's your gift, Don't ever forget that." Elvis nodded, a faint smile on his lips. The weight hadn't entirely lifted, but it had certainly lightened. He still had his struggles, his doubts, but he also had his core truth and the unwavering support of a friend who saw beyond the crown. The diner was starting to fill up as the morning truly began to break. Elvis and Red lingered over their coffee, the conversation now lighter, more reflective. The raw edge of Elvis's despair had softened, replaced by a quiet thoughtfulness. "You know," Red Elvis mused, swirling the last of his coffee in the mug. "All this talk about being the king, it sounds grand, right? But sometimes it feels like I'm trapped in a golden cage." Ed understood. The freedom Elvis had once craved, the freedom to sing and create, had become a different kind of confinement. "But you still find ways to fly. You maybe not as often as you'd like, but you do like tonight. You let it all out. That's freedom." Elvis nodded. "Yeah, that's true." It felt liberating, actually, to just say it, to admit I'm scared, to admit I don't have all the answers. He looked at Red, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "You never. We're in this together, remember," Red said. "Always have been. We've seen each other through worse and better." Elvis chuckled softly. "That's for sure, from Tupelo to Vegas. Who would have thought?" He paused, then his expression grew serious again. "I just gotta figure out how to carry this weight without letting it crush me. How to be Elvis for them, but still being me, for me, and for the people who really matter. It's about balance," Red offered. "Finding those moments of peace, remembering what's real, and not letting the noise get too loud in your head, and leaning on us when you need to." "Yeah," Elvis said, a flicker of resolve in his eyes. "I think I need to do more of that. More quiet time, more time with the guitar, just for myself. More time with Lisa. Less of the circus, when I can help it." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's not going to be easy, I know, this whole thing, it's a machine. But maybe I can find a way to grab the steering wheel a little more often." Red smiled, a genuine sense of hope bubbling within him. He knew Elvis wouldn't be miraculously cured of his self-doubt overnight. It was a battle he'd likely fight for the rest of his life, a byproduct of his extraordinary fame. Tonight, Elvis had faced it head-on, articulated, and allowed himself to be vulnerable. "That's the spirit," Red said. "You're the boss." Elvis finished his coffee, then pushed the mug away. He looked out the diner window at the rising sun, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. It was a new day, and though the internal landscape of his soul still had its shadows, there was a glimmer of light. "I appreciate you," Red Elvis said, his voice husky with emotion. "More than you know." "Same always," Red replied, his voice equally sincere. They stood up to leave, the clatter of plates and distant chatter filling the air. As they walked toward the exit, Elvis's shoulders seemed a little less hunched, his stride a little more purposeful. He was still Elvis Presley, the megastar, but he was also the man who had just faced his deepest fears and found strength in sharing them. He was still vulnerable, but he was no longer alone in that vulnerability. And that Red knew was a far more powerful thing than any crown could ever be. The journey of the king, with all its triumphs and heartaches, would continue. But now, it would continue with a little more clarity and a lot more hope. The sun was fully up when they arrived back at Elvis's private residence, a sprawling house away from the main hustle of Vegas. The quiet of the house was a stark contrast to the buzzing energy of the Hilton. Elvis walked through the familiar rooms, a sense of calm settling over him. He headed straight for the music room, a cozy space filled with instruments, picked up an acoustic guitar, not the one from the dressing room, but his own, morning favorite. He sat down on the plush couch, his fingers finding a familiar chord, a soft, bluesy tune. Red watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame. He didn't say anything, just observed. He saw the tension in Elvis's shoulders slowly melt away as he played. It wasn't a performance. It was a conversation between a man and his instrument, a pure expression of soul. Elvis played for a long time, moving from blues to gospel, then to some of his own rock and roll hits, stripped down and raw. His voice, still a little hoarse from the two shows, was rich with emotion. He wasn't singing for anyone but himself and Red. It was truly beautiful. Finally, he put the guitar down, leaning it carefully against the couch. He looked up at Red, a soft, peaceful smile on his face. "That felt good," he said, his voice quiet. "Really good. I could tell," Red replied. "That's the ye I know, the one who truly loves the music." Elvis nodded. "Yeah, that's the... I need to remember more often the one who started it all, not for the fame, but for the feeling." He rubbed his tired eyes. "It's like the doubts. They're still there. I don't think they'll ever fully go away, not with all this. But they don't feel so overwhelming now. They feel manageable. Like a part of me, but not all of me." "I guess it's like you," said Red. "It's a journey, and sometimes you just need a reminder of what really matters, and who's really there for you, no matter what." Red walked over, putting a hand on Elvis's shoulder. "Always, always." "I think I'm going to try to get some real sleep now," Elvis said, a yawn escaping him. "Been a long night. You deserve it," Red said. "And don't forget what we talked about. More quiet time, more music, just for you, more time with Lisa. Those are the things that fill your tank." Elvis paused at the door of the music room, looking back at his guitar. "I won't forget, Red. I really won't." As he headed towards his bedroom, Red watched him go, a sense of profound relief washing over him. Elvis was still carrying a heavy load, but he was walking a little straighter now, his spirit a little lighter. The raw confessions of the night had opened a door, allowing the light of understanding and acceptance to seep in. Red knew that the world would continue to demand everything from Elvis Presley, the king, but he also knew that thanks to moments like these, Elvis would always have a place where he could just be. Elvis the man, a man with doubts, fears, and an immense heart. A man surrounded by true friends who saw him, truly saw him beyond the glittering facade. And in that acceptance lay his real strength, his enduring legacy, and the promise of a future where, even with the burdens of a king, he could still find moments of profound peace and self-acceptance. A few weeks later, the Vegas hustle continued, but something subtle had shifted in Elvis. He still commanded the stage with his usual explosive energy, but backstage there was a newfound calm about him. The frantic pace, though still demanding, seemed less overwhelming. Took more moments for himself, retreating to his dressing room for quiet stretches before shows, sometimes just strumming his acoustic guitar. Red noticed it, of course. Elvis wasn't completely free of his anxieties. Red would catch a flicker of worry in his eyes before a particularly challenging note, or a moment of exhaustion after a long set. But the deep, consuming self-doubt that had plagued him that night had lessened its grip. One afternoon, Red found Elvis sitting by the pool at his house, tossing a ball for his dogs. He looked relaxed, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, his hair falling naturally without the heavy pompadour. Lisa Marie was playing nearby, her laughter echoing through the garden. Elvis looked up as Red approached, a genuine, easy smile on his face. "Hey, Red. Good to see you." "You too, Red said, sitting down in a nearby lounge chair. "Looks like you're doing all right." Elvis stretched, then leaned back, watching Lisa Marie. "Yeah, I am better than I was a few weeks ago, that's for sure." He paused, then looked at Red, his gaze steady and sincere. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about that night, about the crown and the cage, and being human." "And?" Red prompted gently. "And I realized it's not about getting rid of the doubts entirely," Elvis explained, his voice thoughtful. "They're always going to be there, probably, but it's about acknowledging them, not letting them fester in the dark, and realizing that having doubts doesn't make me weak, it just makes me human." He picked up a small stone from the edge of the pool and skipped it across the water. "And it's about remembering who I am. Away from the stage, remembering what truly fills me up like this." He gestured around the peaceful garden, at Lisa Marie, At his dogs, this is where I can just be me. Red felt a warmth spread through him. This was the peace he had hoped Elvis would find. Not an absence of struggle, but a new way of navigating it. You helped me see that. You reminded me that I'm not alone in this, that I've got people who see beyond the lights and the screaming, who see the guy who just wants to sing and make a difference. Always, Red said, his voice a little husky with emotion. Always, Elvis nodded, a profound sense of gratitude in his eyes. It's funny, isn't it? The biggest star in the world, and sometimes all he needs is to talk to a friend, to remember he's just a regular guy underneath it all. He chuckled softly. But it's true. It makes all the difference. He stood up, heading towards Lisa, Marie a light step in his stride. He scooped her up in a big hug, making her giggle. Red watched them, a smile on his face. The king of rock and roll, still facing his battles, but now armed with a newfound self-awareness and the unwavering support of true friendship. Their road ahead would still be challenging, but Elvis was walking it with a little more grace, a little more hope, and a lot more heart. The raw vulnerability of that night had led to a quiet, enduring strength.